We're not there. We're not there yet.
Oh,
LinkedIn
the
says
podcast is live.
LinkedIn
Hello,
says
what? It
we're
just
not.
told me.
We're not live yet. I don't think. Oh no, we are live now. Oh, kidding.
Hello. This is
Hello,
our
everybody.
first time,
Sorry.
and
LinkedIn.
this is actually what our topic's about. But this is great. This is our first one. Oh my god. Anyway,
LinkedIn's killing us, people. Sorry.
I am in Los Angeles, California, and Tim is in
New South Wales, Australia, near Sydney. If you've heard of Sydney,
Yes.
I'm near Sydney.
Yes, and we do a Trans-Pacific TimTomTalks, normally not live. This is our first one live. And as you saw, this is what happened. Are we live? Are we live yet? I love it. But this is, I mean, our topic today is what we learned from the pandemic and how people have changed in their career views. And what they're looking for out of their careers. And in one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the permissions we have been able to give ourselves now about making mistakes. Whereas if we made that mistake in signing on and saying, hey, are we here yet? What's going on? That would have been completely different and more stressful prior to the pandemic, right? What do you think?
Well, I was just thinking, let's just pause for a moment and just sort of frame where we feel we're at and where we feel at least our two sort of communities and societies are at. And people obviously have a very experience, much as it's universally global, but everyone's got their own version. But what Tom and I were talking about just a little bit earlier before we came on live, and I had my little, oh my God, we're live freak out, was about this. We're in this reflective moment sort of between phases of the pandemic. So we're not saying that the pandemic is over and now we can sort of sit there, and look back across the whole sort of terrain of the pandemic. We feel like we're at the end of phase one, and with vaccine programs coming and people starting to sort of be called back to the office, and there's this sort of sense that maybe we are shifting gears into a new phase of the pandemic. We're sort of saying, right, so what have we learned in phase one, and why is it therefore that potentially people are looking for and wanting something different in phase two? Yes.
Well, I do want to kind of stop there and make a point, and this is why we do the Trans-Pacific discussions, because you guys are a little bit ahead of us in that you guys are already really focusing going back into the office. I think most companies here, if they're not already in there and doing part in the office, part out, or they're not essential workers that have to be there, that there is no rush this year to go back, but the planning's starting to come because now there's hope with the vaccines. The vaccines are going to make all the difference, but we still need to see what that means. And I don't think, at least here, people feel a little bit more tepid in saying, okay, let's move forward, because we keep hearing about all the variances, the different strains, and how they're affecting the vaccine. So we're not as quick to move to the next phase. But I do think what is different about today here is that there's hope. There's hope that it's just around the corner.
Yeah. So I think, I think it's always worth reflecting on the different contexts that we're experiencing. We are joined in partnership and in an entity. The Australian context is different and in contrast to the American one. So yeah, the whole pandemic experience has been very different here to what you guys have been through, and the same in Europe and so on and so on.
I would pull up your mic a little bit, by the way.
Just step back a bit.
No, pull up your mic, because you're like,
sorry.
Yeah, you're a little soft, I think.
We actually didn't do a sound check, did we?
No, we didn't. There you go.
Testing.
Because as you move and you move back, you get really soft, and then
I move around all the time. That's the problem.
I know.
We're learning,
It's not a
people.
problem. I don't think it's a problem. I think that's it shows you're energetic.
Bouncing.
Well, that comes from having kids.
Yeah. So let's just come back to, so yes, in Australia, we are and always will be in a different place and space to where you guys are in the States and elsewhere in the world. But I think potentially one of the benefits that we can bring now in these conversations is if there are trends, if there are experiences that are occurring when the majority of a workforce is, being told to come back to the office, but maybe that's going to take longer in America, well, then we can share and you can perhaps get ahead of the learning curve by learning from what we're doing and maybe what could have been done differently. So
right, because well, and I also think this is very beneficial for us because right now we've been looking at Europe a lot for what's happening with the pandemic, right? Yeah. When they go up, then we follow, and we've been following that. Since you guys are a little ahead of us, we can actually look at Australia as a case of, well, what's happening when you do this? What's going on? And we can use you guys as a case study of, okay, well, they've done that, and these are the things that are coming up in Australia. So I think it's extremely relevant for us.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about these sort of specific sort of two categories that, what are the positives, that have come out of the pandemic phase one, and what have we learned? And then really sort of, what are we picking up? There's some resonance around people wanting something different now. And we've specifically had some conversations with people around their career aspirations, and how is that potentially then going to impact moving forward?
Yeah. And when we, in going back to what I was talking about, now that this has a little bit more context, what I wanted to say is one of the best things that I think we've got out of the pandemic is really a human part of leadership, a human part of being part of an organization. We've been in such flux and changing everything about the way we work in our companies throughout this. Now, as we've come into somewhat of a norm, we're now going to be moving out of that as we move to this next phase. And the best thing that I think we can put a little pin in it of what we learned is that I think by doing Zooms, by going virtual and having a lot of things not work for us the way we intended the first time, the second time, and that it was a continual learning process, we've learned to be more forgiving of ourselves and others because it's just, we've been on a very steep learning curve. And I don't think that learning curve, this is my belief, that's going to go away anytime soon, because we're going to go very quickly into this next phase. Maybe it'll be quick, maybe it'll be slow. We don't know yet. But that's the point. We don't know. So by not knowing, we have to learn. And by learning, there's going to be a curve, and it's okay. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think that I'm glad you brought up both the permission and the kindness bit already, because I don't think that's universal, but I do think it's essential. And I know my own personal experience, I think the kindness came a bit late.
Well, you actually had a different experience, and I think sharing that would be good. And when you share up to the mic, not pull back, which you will tend to do. Just hit it.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, so without going into detail, because it's something that we're going to be talking about, and there's going to be some more stuff coming in our social feeds, and both Tom and I have got sort of medium length articles that are going to be published in the next few days, specifically about essentially stress. But I think my experience in phase one and the learnings that have come out of that is I went into just sort of maximum overdrive on all fronts. Like we had this very acute demand side collapse back in March, and we really went long over servicing our current customers in a good way, in a completely good way. Just really, sort of opening up the doors, whatever you need. That let's just help you any way we can. And in terms of me being kind of a support framework for various people internally and externally, all in on that, and then really just sort of going right into just this massive content production mode. Just trying to, I think, try and sow some seeds of hope and, sort of share, whatever it is that I have to contribute, to the ongoing debate about what leadership is and what leaders do and how leaders can make the world better, of course.
And in that, you made yourself sick.
Like, I mean, over a long period of time, I essentially did not recognize the accumulation of, small, medium, and large stressors, and just kept adding layer upon layer upon layer of stress with very little appreciation and recognition of the fact that is what I was doing. And essentially got myself into a complete overwhelm and cognitive block where all of my sort of normal levels of effectiveness and efficiency and productivity really started to slow down. And
you had to reset, and then
yeah,
I had to reset because I had the same thing building up, and life just kind of presents resetting if you're not going to do it. And I ended up moving the holidays. I moved at the end of the holidays. I got COVID. My house got COVID. There was an extended period of recovering. And, we're back with this. And this is, again, a permission. We realize what happened to us, and we're not the only ones out there. And this is why we're sharing is, we ended up having to regroup, and we stopped our TimTomTalks, which people have been saying, when are those coming back? And now we're doing them live, not perfectly, not perfectly, but that's okay. And this is where the permission, and that's really good. But that's enough on that, because I like your topic that you wanted to talk about too, because you've been learning from a lot of your contacts in Australia, going into the next phase, what's happening with the workforce.
Yeah. So I think I will progress on. I think the final little reflection would be, the big thing that shifted for me, and I think that this is something that is shifting in others and is leading to this change in ambitions or expectations or whatever it is. And that's the second thing that I want to talk about. But I think what's shifting is, this giving yourself permission to have some kindness for self and learn compassion, essentially. And that starting there sort of allows you then to go on and reset expectations and have much more manageable goals and so on and so forth. So this I think is the experience that Tom and I have had is not universal, but seems to be consistent regardless of whether or not you individually and you organizationally had a good, bad, or indifferent time through the COVID pandemic. We've got clients that have had their best ever revenue years, and their entire team is exhausted, and are recognizing that there is a lot of stress even in a really good commercial performance period. So I think we can speak to our own personal lived experience, but we've, to an extent, I think, almost sort of been surprised the extent to which everybody seems to be stressed, regardless of whether or not their experience of COVID has been good or bad. So what we're trying to do is then sort of share our experience and share the insights and learnings that we've had to help people go through that same or their own version of that journey around coming to a point of reflection and self-kindness and reframing expectations. So the expectations that I'm experiencing, I'd probably put them into two camps. I think on the one side, there's people who are literally just sort of saying, you know what, COVID has been great. And I've had a really, really powerful learning that what I was doing before, I wasn't actually really enjoying. And what I thought I was getting out of it wasn't what I thought it was. And now I'm going to reset my expectations, and I'm either going to stay in my role and in my same organization, but I'm going to approach that role and organization very differently. Or I am going to leave my organization, or I am going to start the process to look to leave. And what I'm looking for is something different. And I could talk about this under the label of ambition, but I think it really comes down more appropriately to expectations. Right? My expectations are now that I actually want to have time at home with my family, or I actually don't want to be on the road 80 days out of 100, or certain things are important to me and certain things are less important than they were, and other things are more important. So that's the one camp, resetting expectations. And I think the other one then is, sorry, um, the other one is, something that we talk about, which is, sort of doing the deepest work, doing the most purposeful work. I think for a lot of people, there's been a real challenge put to themselves, and this series of questions that they've asked themselves basically about, am I doing something that's impactful and is going to make a difference?
Oh yeah, I've had a few people coming to me for wait, I need to rethink this. Does this match who I want to be and what I want to be? And is there a way I can stay here and create that, or do I need to look for something else? I get a lot of requests for help on reevaluating my career, reevaluating my leadership principles. I get a lot of that through LinkedIn. And the people are really questioning where they are, where they're going.
Yeah. So I think it's either a reframing of what is most important, and it's a reframing of, is what I am doing important and impactful? Whether it's important to me personally, but it needs to be important to others, and whether others are my team, my friends, my community, my country, the whole wide world. So I think to start to summarize, we could say, I think what we've learned through the pandemic is technology is great, but it's part of the solution. It's not the answer. This has been a very human experience, and everyone's own experience is both individual and collective, because you have this compounding cascade influence on everyone that you have contact with, whether that's holding hands when you can do that, or zooming people across the globe. You have an influence and an impact as you go through the world. And this has been a really not unique, but a very novel experience, and one that a lot of people are going to need some time to reframe and reset themselves and their perspectives of and from.
Well,
and then what are we going to do with that? Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, well, and I think organizations, if you want to keep your people, it's okay. What am I going to need to do to re-engage them in our company and get them to want to stay? And how am I going to address stress? And what does it look like in my organization? Next week, we are going to talk about stress, and we're going to talk about a program that we have that combats that. I'm publishing a book right now. As soon as it's published, everybody will know, and we'll talk about it then. But it's about deconstructing stress, and it's really breaking apart individual stress from organizational, but also identifying where it is, and if it's an organizational problem, if it's a departmental, if it's a individual, really getting us in a practical way deal with stress instead of trying to meditate everything away, because you can't. You have a bill to pay, you have to pay the bill before that stress will go away. And if you can't, then that's a whole different, action plan. But that's what we have to deal with each one on its face.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really, it's like we've got to have more of these conversations about how are we engaging people? How are we keeping them? Are we providing an opportunity for the future? Are we developing them as leaders? Are we developing them as people? Are we coaching? Are we creating ways to deal with this environment that either the one we're in the U.S. and the one you're going to in Australia? What does that look like? So lots of opportunity for discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So look, I think we may leave it there for today. We are definitely going to be reconvening more often. We'll be back again next week. I think we'll see how we go with the weekly cadence, but we'll certainly be showing up. We will certainly be showing up, when we feel like we've got something to offer.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
we had a lot of positive feedback about these sessions through last year, and a number of people came to us and kind of said, where have the Tim Tom Talks gone, and when are you going to bring them back? So thanks for bearing with us today. And yeah, the whole live thing, we'll figure that out.
I know. It wasn't so bad. Well, who knows? The one thing I do know on Facebook, when you're doing it on Facebook, it tells you how many people are watching. Where this is, hey, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Roll
So there we go. First crapshoot concluded.
Anyway, thank you, Tim. You're awesome. This has been great.
Thanks, mate. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.